Today we're going to take a look at some quick tips and tricks that you can use to improve your double action revolver shooting. Now, why do we care so much about double action revolver shooting? Well, if you're carrying this gun for personal protection, shooting it in competitions, or you're being charged by a dangerous animal, you may not have time to pull that hammer back to the single action notch, which means you're going to need to be good at getting that double action shot off accurately. So when we talk about double action shooting, we have two different modes that we're going to use to pull the trigger. The first is called rolling through the trigger, where we apply continuous steady pressure to the trigger regardless of the complexity of the shot. And the second is staging the trigger. We generally want to avoid staging the trigger except for when the shot requires the highest degree of accuracy possible. And we'll explain why that is here in just a second. But first, let's talk about rolling through the trigger. To roll through the trigger, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my trigger finger and I'm going to place it somewhere in between the tip of my index finger and that first joint is going to be what interacts with the trigger. Then to roll through the trigger, I'm going to go ahead and just aim at my target and I'm going to apply continuous steady pressure back through the trigger until the shot goes off. Think of it like riding a bicycle, right? You don't smash down on a bicycle, you move the pedals evenly. Now I can do a fast roll or I can do a slow roll, depending on whether I have a wide open shot or I need to hit a smaller, more precise shot. Now, the reason why we don't want to stage the trigger in most situations is if I'm staging the trigger, what I'm doing is I'm taking most of the weight of the DA trigger pull out of it and then holding it here where the gun has locked up. Essentially, when I'm doing that, I'm holding 6 to 10 pounds, depending on your trigger weight, just on the weight of my index finger while I'm trying to clean up my sights, and that can induce fatigue pretty quickly. The only times you'd really want to think about staging your trigger are when you have a very, very tight shot that you need to make. And even then, I think it's better to practice working on a continuous prep of the trigger versus staging it. Because if I'm going to shoot a tight shot, I can stage and then shoot, or I can just roll through the trigger slowly, applying continuous pressure. Now let's take a look at what that looks like in live fire. In live fire, the first thing we're going to demonstrate is a continuous rapid press, all right? This is useful on a wide open target, close range target, something like that. We're just going to start from the aimed in position, and then we're going to rip right through the trigger. Now we're going to go through a slow press. So we're going to go for a headshot on this one, and I'm going to apply slow, continuous pressure through the trigger, aiming at the head box. The last one of these that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stage the trigger, aiming again for the head box. Now, given those three choices, I prefer to continuously roll through the trigger, especially if you're going to do something fun like shoot fast. That's it. Using those basic tricks, you'll be able to improve your double action revolver shooting almost immediately. Now it's time to get out to the range and do some practicing though.